In this module, we will discuss the growth of cell, the various parameters, and how the growth of cell is controlled. Mind you, these all processes of the cell, they are not uncontrolled or independent. There exists a certain definite control which is there for the growth. Now, cell growth, it naturally accompanies the cell division. When cell divides, the cell grows. Now, in single-celled organism like bacteria or the yeast, both cell growth and cell division that require only nutrients. That is, the nutrients are required for the cell growth and the nutrients are required for the division which occur. Now remember, these two processes, growth and division, they are interrelated and they are controlled, but they require nutrients. In animals, anyway, the both cells growth and cell proliferation, it depend upon the growth factor and the mitogens, which we have already studied. So we have to have the growth factor and the mitogens in the animals, which are multicellular organisms. The extracellular growth factor that stimulates animal cell growth, it binds to the receptor on the cell surface and activate intracellular signaling pathway. Now the cell growth, the cell requires some signals, some commands from somewhere, and these are from where? They are the extracellular growth factor which attach to the receptor on the cell surface and activate the intracellular signaling. These pathways, they stimulate the accumulation of proteins and other macromolecules. Because the proteins are very important, they are enzymes, they are structural component of the cell, and the macromolecules, which are the growth factor and these, they trigger uptake of nutrient and ATP synthesis. ATP is very, very important because this is the currency of the living system and it drives all the living material or the living process further. Now, for example, the enzyme phosphoinositide 3 kinase, which is abbreviated as PI3 kinase, is very important. And this intracellular signaling pathway is activated by growth factor receptors. So you see that we need some growth factor receptor where this enzyme binds. The activation of PI3 kinase leads to the activation of a kinase called TOR, which lies at the heart of the cell growth regulatory pathway in all eukaryotes. That is, the TOR is the major working enzyme which is responsible for the growth regulatory process or the regulatory pathway in the eukaryotes. For example, as we discussed, the intracellular factor, it leads to the cell growth and then the cell division. That can be dependent or independent. In many cell types, the rate of the cell division is governed by the rate of the cell growth, just as in the yeast. That is, if the rate of the cell division is high, then the rate of cell growth will also be high. If it is lower, then vice versa, like this. Or it can be in some animal cell types, growth and division can each be controlled by separate extracellular factors like growth factors, mitogens, respectively, or other controlling compound or the macromolecule, where extracellular factor cell growth and the cell division, they are independent from each other in the animal. Now, proliferating cells, they usually coordinate their growth and division. When the cells grow, they coordinate their growth and then divide. The proliferating cells must coordinate their growth with cell division to ensure that cell size double with each division, because the cell size should increase with each division. If the cell grow too slow, then naturally they will get smaller with each division and go on getting smaller, smaller, smaller. And if they grow too fast, then they will get larger with each division, and that will be also not required. Now, animal cells growth and the division are not always coordinated. Remember, the animal cell growth and division, they are not always coordinated, and in many cases, they are completely uncoupled to allow growth without division or division without growth.